I'm taking the team total. I'm taking first quarter, first half, full game, taking it all. OU all the way. I lost so much money on OU.
Our rat's ass about Twitter.
Oh, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free.
Cast starts going, all crazy. And they run through our ass like shit through a tin horn, man.
That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
What is up, and welcome to Not Another CFB Pod. This is the weekend review show. This was maybe the greatest weekend of football that we've maybe ever had. I mean, this was incredible. We had a ton of great college games, including the college football playoff games, which we'll talk about. Then we had all those NFL games that were insane. Then we had an even crazier Monday, which we'll talk about all this stuff. It's an insane weekend of football. So good to be here. Shout out Coda Capper Beast, the co-host of the show. What's going on, dude?
Not too much. You're spot on here, man. I'm so fired up just after like that weekend of football. And we had a really good Monday too. Like a lot of people had Monday off, so we were watching games all day today.
Yes.
It was a fun weekend. I mean, like you kind of said with the CFP, it's rare that we've gotten such close matchups, and both games were really, really electric, and a lot of good NFL games, obviously, too, throughout the weekend. It was stock loaded full of good games, and we'll have some big games coming up, obviously, this next week, too, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. Can't wait, because that's when all the NFL stuff starts to wrap up. And so the next show you guys hear will be our last week of the NFL season, which will be week 18, I believe. And then we'll have the national championship picks on that show too. So It's going to be a transition because college football, sadly, mostly over. We got to talk about what happened, and we'll start with the college football playoff. And I think we'll just do it in the order that it happened. So first we had Michigan, TCU. Beast and I both jumped on TCU +8. I had a great Twitter space with a good group of people from the community just talking about this game on Twitter. It was a lot of fun. We said that basically we liked TCU, but if we could clearly see that there was a physical mismatch, we were going to hop on Michigan. Well, for the most part, that never really happened. We stayed on TCU for the most part. They got a great win in this one, 51-45. Max Duggan was really good despite having 2 interceptions. I thought the run game for TCU worked out very well, even though Miller, kind of their starting running back, got hurt. They still had a lot of good yards on the ground. Insane game, though. One of the best playoff games we've had in a long time, 51-45. Tons of points. It was a good time, man.
Dude, that third quarter was one of the best quarters of football we've seen all year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 44 points in the third quarter.
Just ridiculous. They said at like one point, I want to say it was like 4 or 5 touchdowns within like a 5-minute span.
4 minutes, 30 seconds. I think there was 5 touchdowns.
Just nuts. And it was fun, man. It got really, really electric in that second half. At no point did I really know who was going to win that game all the way down to the finish, just because Michigan was making a late push. But I got to give TCU credit because they showed up a little bit more prepared, in my opinion. And it's no disrespect to Michigan. People will probably be like, oh, he's got his Michigan State bias. It just was like Michigan seemed to – there were some really critical mistakes that kind of were the name of the game. You know, obviously the 2 pick sixes were a big deal, but fumbling on the 1-yard line, I mean, the muffed snap at the end of the game with JJ, like there was a lot of stuff like that TCU just didn't do. You know, TCU scored the points, but didn't make those kinds of mistakes, really. They had a couple of picks themselves, but
I was going to say,
like Michigan.
Yes, each team had 3 turnovers, but 2 of those Michigan turnovers were directly 14 points.
Right.
You had 6 turnovers total in this game. You had 1,016 total yards in this game. So it was just like, it was like a video game. And you made a good point about there were parts in that game where it felt like, okay, yeah, for sure TCU is going to win this. There were parts in that game where like, oh, okay, Michigan's clearly better. They're going to win this. It was just like a game of runs. It was like basketball almost. It was just
very
an insane game. It was so fun. And like I said, up to that point, probably the best playoff semifinal that we've seen. I mean, a lot of them just haven't been close games necessarily. They haven't been that electric offensively. You just never knew what to expect from this one.
Yeah, and it set us up, obviously, for a big second game, too. Because that was the thing was typically the 4 o'clock game, I feel like in past years, has been the game they didn't expect to be as good. Like last year, we saw Cincy and Alabama, and I mean, Cincy hung around and tried their best, but like it was very apparent that entire time that like they did that on purpose, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the bigger spread in the earlier spot for sure in this
Yeah.
one, and it ended up being a big time upset. We don't see those very often, and I said that first game was maybe our best college football playoff game ever. Then the next game happened, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, Ohio State, Georgia, back and forth down to the wire. Ohio State gets a last-second look at a field goal to go ahead, but they miss it wide, and the Georgia Bulldogs pull it off 42-41. It took a huge comeback. You and I had that Twitter space before the game, and we talked about Georgia is tailored to be ahead, and then they just kind of run the ball, lean on you, play action pass. They're not built to come from behind. I thought Stetson Bennett was really nice in this game. I guess it never felt like he was like a dominant superstar, but when you look at his numbers, he was pretty darn efficient. Yeah. He had almost 400 yards passing, 3 touchdowns passing. He ran the ball at times very well too. You got to kind of give the guy some credit because he led this team from behind, and that's a spot that a lot of us kind of thought maybe early on there was no shot he was doing that. I was obviously on Georgia minus whatever it was 6 by the time it ended up all the way down to like 4.5. Yeah. I think we were talking about. So very strange line movement right there before. Part of me wonders if what's the big defensive lineman for Georgia's name? Is it Davis? Is that no? That's the
Carter.
Carter. Yeah. Davis is the one with the Eagles now from last year. So this one this year, Carter. Some people noticed he just didn't play near as many snaps as he has in the past. He didn't have as many, tackles for loss, things like that we're used to. So makes me wonder if that was maybe part of the handicap is like somebody saw from practice that he wasn't 100%, into this. Yeah. I don't know. Weird line movement. But shout out Ohio State for giving us a great game. Georgia ends up pulling it off in the end, though. Crazy.
Yeah, that was one of the best games we've had out of all the bowl games, obviously. But it was perfect because it was like lined up, especially for us on like Eastern time zone. It was lined up with like right about.
We need to talk about that. The final kick to try and win this game. Ohio State's lining up as we're under 10 seconds into the new year in Eastern time zone. And like somebody synced the videos up. It's like 3 seconds from the ball drop when his foot hits the ball. So maybe it's a simulation. I don't know.
It was funny just because like my story that I had out of it is it's like me and my boys were at the bar and we were with some girls too. And it's like the ball drop's going. So boys are trying to get their little New Year's Eve kiss. They're trying to get their smooch in, but there's a big game on and it's like this kick. So it's like, do you just kind of like turn the girl down real quick and just say, hey, like there's a game on, sorry, maybe another time? Yeah. Or do you, so like we were like torn. We kind of talked about it after, we were kind of laughing, but that's exactly what the situation was.
It was insane.
No, it was so good. And the thing that scares me about Georgia, and part of the reason why I think we're seeing such a big spread in this national championship game, is Georgia was down 38-24 entering the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. And we kind of said, like you had mentioned, that we don't think that they're a team that typically plays from behind. But to rally back and win that game in the fourth quarter, I mean, they outscored them 18-3 in the fourth quarter. Just a ridiculous performance by Georgia in that fourth quarter. And I guess I just wondered, I'm like, man, like if that was there all game, maybe they would have rolled in this game. But when they want to turn it on, they seem like the best team in the country. It's just sometimes I feel like they were a little bit slow at times last Saturday. Like they I guess I wouldn't necessarily say slow, but they let Ohio State hang around. You know what I mean? And Ohio State probably, if you had a better kick there, they probably should have won that game themselves. So,
yeah, I mean, they were in position to do it, and we need to give some flowers to Ohio State here. Shout out our guy, Coda Capper JD, because they put up an awesome fight, man, and they were in the lead. They had a big lead even. And it's funny because, like, I don't even put it so much on their defense. Like, obviously, if their defense made a couple more plays, they win the game. They were in position to win it with a field goal. I don't even think this was Georgia playing bad. I'm interested to hear what you think about this. I don't even think it was Georgia playing bad. I think it was Ohio State just played awesome. I thought that was like the best they looked basically all year, at least in my opinion. I haven't seen every single game, of course, every snap of every game. But, man, we haven't seen C.J. Stroud scramble like that. He was dissecting the defense, and this was a defense that just doesn't get dissected. Got to give some love to the Buckeyes, man.
Yeah, I feel like maybe that's a better way to say it, because I probably was saying like Georgia didn't play their best game. I think you're right. I think
there's some of both. There is some of both.
Maybe Ohio State more or less. I think more probably. I agree with you. They probably caught him off guard a little bit because nobody's put up this kind of offense against Georgia. Maybe like a little bit at times this year, but this was the best offense I think that they faced, and this was the biggest scare they've had on offense. I would say. And CJ Stroud, man, that's the type of game you expect out of a guy that's supposed to be a first-round pick. So anybody that was throwing doubt, towards him, I mean, he threw for like 350 yards, 4 touchdowns. I want to say he had 30-something yards on the ground. And
they were crucial yards on the ground.
He was a big difference in that game. And I feel like at times people are like, well, it's the product of who's around him. I don't know. I think he was moving the ball. He was making plays. That offense would not have put up 40-something points if he wasn't playing like he did. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, he's got to get some credit for that. And I don't want to say I'm a CJ Stroud hater. I've just been in that boat where it's like, well, look at all his receivers. In fact, I even put out a tweet about something like that. But as this game went on, and especially it should be noted that Marvin Harrison Jr. eventually did get knocked out of this game, he still didn't really miss too much of a beat. Now, they weren't as good once Marvin Harrison Jr. went out.
True.
There's no doubt about that. But as far as CJ Stroud is concerned, he didn't play like worse himself. Obviously they didn't get it done in the end, but he put his team in a position to win the game, something a first-round draft pick should do. So that sets up our national championship game, Georgia Bulldogs versus the TCU Horned Frogs, just like we all had it drawn up in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, we had it drawn up that way.
It's crazy. So I've seen the number as far as in the national championship game around 13. I'm going to try to look and see what the over-under is real quick, because that's something I'm interested in.
62 and a half, 63.
62 and a half. I'd be pretty interested in over. Got to be honest with you. I do think Georgia's defense ends up playing better in this one, but the way TCU kind of forced Michigan into playing their game, you know what I mean? And if it's going to turn into a track meet, I like their chances. I know they can put up points. They got a veteran team. They also got a great play caller in Garrett Riley, who he dialed some stuff up, I thought, this weekend. That's an exciting game. Just a quick preview from us. I guess if I had to lean a direction, I like TCU plus that many points. Ton of points. Yeah. Beast and I have talked about all season, when you've got a good quarterback, good offense, that back door is wide open. But I don't even think there's a potential. I don't even think we need that back door. I think TCU can scare them. If Ohio State can, I think TCU can. Their defense flies around. It's not physically imposing necessarily, but they're really fast. They put up a pretty good fight against Michigan, who we think has a great offensive line. So I'm not immediately scared of Georgia's, run game. Like it's not the same run game as it was when they had like Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. You remember those days when they just ran all over OU. So Georgia can run the ball, no doubt, but it's not like it used to be. I like TCU to keep it close. You got any thoughts?
Yeah, I both those plays that you just mentioned. So for anybody listening out there that you guys are wondering, because we'll have a show obviously on Thursday or Friday of this week, but I would probably lean TCU and probably the over. But the big thing with TCU that makes me think is we just kind of talked so much about how Stroud was able to run on the ground and he was able to throw quite a bit too. TCU's got some weapons. Obviously, Quentin Johnson, he's the big name, obviously, like your top receiver on the board for some people. Yeah. But Max Duggan, he can run the ball. Arguably, I shouldn't say arguably, he's a better runner than Stroud, or at least they use him more in the ground game than I feel like Ohio State uses Stroud. So if Duggan can kind of do that dual threat thing, Georgia was having some issues with that. And you got some real good pieces on that TCU team. Like, there's a reason they put up the numbers they did on a Michigan defense that most of us considered to be like top 2, top 3 in the country. So if you can do that to Michigan, I feel like you might be able to kind of just get Max Duggan out in space, make him run. Like, Georgia's probably built more for, a pocket passer. Like, and that's not what Duggan necessarily is. He can be, but he can get out there. So I like TCU. That's a lot of points for a national championship game, even if you get a backdoor cover. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I'm just really looking forward to this game, just because it's an oddball matchup. We've got one of the big dogs in the game, no pun intended, I guess, with Georgia. They're there every year. They just won it last year. Stetson Bennett, redemption tour or whatever. He just won it, but he could win it again. And then TCU, the new blood. And I love what they got going on. They've still got me blocked on Twitter, which is very sad.
It is.
We're going to keep working on that. Maybe if they win the Natty, they'll unblock me because it's just like, hey, nobody can hate on us. We're the champs. That would be insane because this is a huge underdog story. They weren't even projected to be anything in the Big 12. I saw a lot of people thought they'd be fighting for a bowl appearance at 6-6, and here they are with one loss, and that was in the championship game. Now they're going to play for a national championship. Pretty cool. Just for that team and everything going on with them. We need to look at some bowls, but I do need to note, just because everything's crazy right now, I've had my eye on the screen over here to my right.
Yeah.
And that's because DeMar Hamlin from the Bills Bengals is going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Bad injury, dude. Like bad. Like they had
Really?
the card out.
Oh, God.
But it gets worse. So it's been in the first quarter this whole time. Now it's gotten to the point they've suspended the game. And so this could be like really, really bad. Like, I don't know how to say it, but like this game probably won't happen tonight, which is a pretty big red flag for anyone out there that follows along.
So was it like a hit to the head kind of thing? Or?
Yeah, he kind of, honestly, I didn't even see a lot of the hit because it was right when we started recording.
And they're probably not going to have much.
So for anyone out there, it's been it's been 30 minutes and they just haven't.
Oh yeah, no. I'm reading.
Twitter's going crazy right now.
Broadcast says they're administering CPR, so that's not good.
That's not good
at all. Yeah,
Beast is a nurse in real life.
No. You'd assume maybe something cardiac arrest, obviously, like is your first thought. Bad. But I like we'll have to kind of see what's going on. But obviously, prayers up.
Yes, that's scary.
We'll kind of obviously, I'm sure more people will have updates by the time the show's out, but.
Right.
Yeah, that's scary.
I just
stuff.
wanted to read that because it's happening as we're recording this, which is kind of a crazy thing. Because I wanted to hit on Monday Night Football a little bit when we got to the NFL part. Because my last pick of the day was the Bills. I'm undefeated right now, so like, kind of see if we finish the sweep or not. We're probably not going to find out, honestly. And I don't know what happens now. But prayers up because that's crazy. Not something you see very often when they're doing CPR on a player on the field. Not a good thing. Okay. I've got to try to shift gears because we do have other bowls to talk about. This is the weekend review show. So we want to make sure we like I said, the bowls were insane. I don't know where to start. I guess a decent spot would be to talk about the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl real quick. Just a big deal because this wasn't ESPN or Fox or anybody. This was put on by Barstool. We're Barstool fans. We're not like fanboys, but like we like their content. We like what they do, especially Big Cat, who had a giant role in this one. It was Ohio versus Wyoming. Great game. Ended up going to overtime. Wyoming wins it in a walk-off touchdown in overtime. It was incredible. We were on Wyoming money line, so it kind of hurt. It worked out in a way good for me because I got into some beef with some people who took Ohio +2 or whatever.
There you go.
And I just threw that thing out there that was like, you don't need the points, money line. And had they covered the points but not won the game, they would have given me crap back. So I'm glad that we all lost if we're going to lose. But a heck of a game just for a smaller bowl. I just wanted to give it some shine.
Yeah, I had the under in that one, which never stood a chance, unfortunately.
Especially when it went to OT.
Yeah, especially when it went to overtime. But, there's going to be games like that where it just certain offenses like Wyoming, I wasn't expecting their offense to put up 27, let alone Ohio on a backup quarterback. But you know what? Things happen, and that's why sports betting is so good. Is you could have a great read on something you feel like, and then you're completely wrong.
You're totally wrong, which happens. I was also on NC State, so here's one that I got wrong. Mm-hmm. Maryland beats NC State 16-12 in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Wasn't a very exciting game, but we did have some exciting games, so I want to make sure we get to them. I guess a surprising result before we get to the close games. Tennessee Clemson in the Orange Bowl. Tennessee got a bunch of opt-outs. Quarterbacks hurt. I think a late ad for me was Clemson minus whatever they were, 3. But Tennessee came out and balled out, man. Milton looked awesome. Tennessee wins it 31-14. Great win for the Tennessee program because a lot of people thought it was just Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt, and neither one of those guys played this game, and they were awesome.
Yeah, I got to give Milton some credit. He's bounced around so much, obviously. Like, obviously everybody remembers him when he was in Michigan.
The Michigan days, yep.
Yeah, the Michigan days. They thought he was going to be like the GOAT at Michigan, and he's kind of kept his head up. And obviously, like, when your number gets called, you got to show up. And that was a good performance. A good performance by the whole Tennessee team in general. You know what I mean? That was a game. I'll be honest. Like, I didn't think Tennessee stood a shot. I really didn't think that they'd be able to move the ball much. I didn't think they'd be able to do it, and they proved me wrong. I didn't have a bet on it, but it was a fun game to watch for sure.
Absolutely, and a great win, like I said, for Tennessee's program, because that's one that a lot of people, I think, thought maybe they were a bit of flash in the pan. It's just a couple guys. So that's why they were underdogs in this game, and they proved everybody wrong, which is always cool. Okay, so we had some crazy ones. South Carolina, Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl. Notre Dame wins at 45-38. Tyler Buckner was the quarterback for Notre Dame. It was an insane experience. I think I may have jumped on South Carolina live, which ended up being a bad call, but it was because Buckner, he threw some picks, he threw some touchdowns. Like, you just didn't know what you were going to get from the guy. But I will say this is the best offensively Notre Dame's looked in a long time.
Yeah, and he was running the ball, man. He had I want to say he had 60 yards rushing, but he had 2 touchdowns. And like the one run was a really nice run for the touchdown. I remember specifically. I think that might have been the go ahead. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, he played a great game. You're right. Like it was an experience because it was very much roller coaster. They were putting up a ton of yards, but then they were also turning the ball over at times. So
yeah,
give Notre Dame credit though. They were stacking up the yards. I mean, I want to say Buckner had 275 passing, but they had like 3 guys rush over 60 yards. So, I mean, they were just moving the ball. I got to give them credit. I want to say total yards, they had 558. Yeah, so like that's a ton of yards. So they were moving the ball. South Carolina, though, too, give them credit because they hung around in this game.
Yeah.
It was a tight loss,
Yeah. We also had a crazy game. It was the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, which always randomly produces some good ones. Pitt ends up winning this one 37-35, but I kind of got to set it up because it's crazy.
Right.
So with 4 minutes left in the game, Pitt's up 34-28. UCLA with 34 seconds left gets a touchdown to go up 35-34. 34 seconds left. That's got to be a W, right? Wrong. 6 plays, 46 yards, 30 seconds. Pitt gets in position to kick the game-winning field goal, and they hit it. They win it 37-35. Just an insane comeback. Like the whole fourth quarter was crazy. There was fireworks. Everybody said it was a big collapse, and I guess I agree just because how do you get 6 plays in 30 seconds? But insane. You got any thoughts on that one real quick?
Well, yeah, I mean, you covered it pretty good, but the biggest thought I think I'd say is I got to give some shout out to this kid on Pitt, this kicker. I mean, he had a really nice fourth quarter. He hit 3 field goals. So he hit 31, 27, and then 47. And I think he had maybe a field goal or 2 before that as well. He hit a 22 and a 49er. Let's see how many – he had to have had 5 field goals. I think he might have went 5 for 5, I believe, kicking. 5 for 5, hit a 49-yard. I mean, that's hard in college. I feel like sometimes we got to give some shout outs to these college kickers because college kickers can miss, and he kind of might have been the MVP of that game in a certain sense. I mean, you hit 5 field goals, 3 of them in the fourth quarter. You might not win that game if it wasn't for him,
and they needed every single one of them.
So I gotta give a shout out to this kid. Sauls is his last name.
Yeah, it's kind of spelled weird. I didn't know how to say that.
Yeah.
Insane. Okay, so moving on. Let's go to Saturday. We already talked about the 2 college football playoff games, but we actually had 2 other ones. They weren't good, so we don't have to stay long. Alabama whoops up on Kansas State 45-20 in the Sugar Bowl. Only thing I wanted to mention, shout out Bryce Young because he quieted a lot of critics himself. He had a really good game. Not that Kansas State's the stiffest opponent, but they did win the Big 12. It's not that easy to do. Pretty good team, and he made them look really bad. Shout out Bryce Young.
Yeah, his numbers were just ridiculously efficient. 15 of 21 for 321 yards and 5 touchdowns. I mean, the fact that you had 15 completions and 5 touchdowns, a third of your completions were touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Which is awesome numbers. And when Bryce Young is on, like, I've always been on board with the idea that he's probably one of the best quarterbacks in the country, if not the best. To me, like, when he's on and you get Bryce Young's best game, I might take him over any other quarterback in the nation right now.
I know.
Maybe that's not that hot of a take.
Well, but for people, there's an argument now because there was a little bit of Will Levis creeping in there, but like CJ Stroud, like they both played great. Like Will Levis is the only loser this weekend because Kentucky loses 21-0. He was not there for his team. He opted out, which probably smart because Iowa's defense looks sharp out there. I was on Iowa. That was easy. Honestly, that was my third screen game. I didn't want to watch that one too much because it was pretty ugly out there at the Music City Bowl. They play on Tennessee's field. The Cowboys-Titans game was 2 days before, and they had a previous bowl game on that field too. The field was not great. It was the perfect matchup for this. Total was 31 by kickoff, and it goes under at 21. I think you and I both talked about taking that under too. But yeah, I think we're ready to move on to Monday. Yeah. That's when some huge bowls happen. We're obviously recording on Monday, but all these games are over. We'll start with the ReliQuest Bowl. That's where Mississippi State and Illinois were playing. I was on Mississippi State. Crazy finish, but just want to give a shout out to the team for winning for Mike Leach. I know that's got to be tough. They were asking the players a lot of questions about Mike Leach right after the game. Their coach died not even a couple weeks ago, so it's got to be a pretty tough subject to talk about, but they did a good job with it. I guess the crazy thing about this is, so Mississippi State goes up 3 with like 3 seconds to go. They kick the game-winning field goal. Illinois, on their drive, they did the classic lateral thing. And honestly, they did it about as good as I've ever seen it. It was like a hook and ladder so that the receiver ended up, 30, 40 yards down the field. They were in really good position. And I don't know if you noticed it, but the scheme was to throw the ball backwards to the quarterback again so that he could run up the field and throw it laterally all the way across. Well, he was kind of getting pressure, skips the ball, and a Mississippi State player scoops it and scores. We end up winning 19-10, and we cover the -3. It was just electric because I've never been on like that, the good side of those beats. I'm always on the losing side. But it was good to get a win there. Do you have any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, it was definitely the worst beat of the weekend for anybody on Illinois, but best win of the weekend for anybody on Mississippi State. So you're right. Like it feels like those breaks never go our way. So when they do, we got to take them all we can get them. And that was a very, very wild game. Just big comeback, I would say, from Mississippi State. Obviously, that was big that they hit that late in the game, and then obviously the weird kind of backwards pass, like you said, going their way to get that cover is just incredible. So maybe it wasn't the prettiest game in the world, but from a gambling perspective, I know a lot of people were dying for that last touchdown.
Yeah, I know. It was just insane. There was even a flag on the play, and we were in the group chat just going nuts because most of us were on Mississippi State, and we just knew they were going to call it back. I don't even know. It was a weird penalty. It was like after the fumble was recovered, illegal blindside block on the offense. So I don't even know why they're throwing a block if the other team has the ball.
Right.
I don't know if that was them just being like, let's just get out of here. It was weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, a good win if anybody was on Mississippi State with us. I want to mention too, we had the Citrus Bowl. We won't talk about it long because Purdue was not ready to play a football game today. They lost 63-7 to LSU. Shout out LSU. Great season for them. Even after their quarterback got knocked out in this one, they had Nussmeier come in, and he had a couple great plays for him, and even a third quarterback that had a couple good plays for him. Like I said, Purdue just should have opted out because they weren't in it to play. And what's even sadder is they had a bad injury at the end of the game where guy had to be put on with a neck brace on the board and everything. Bad deal. So yeah, all bad, but I was on the over in a parlay, just kind of sprinkled it. And anyway, ended up hitting that because 63-7 was the final. So good win. Let's get to, I'm trying to think of the order. Let's do the Rose Bowl first.
Yeah.
So Rose Bowl was Penn State, Utah. This game's always just so scenic and awesome. This year there was a little bit of rain, so it didn't quite hit that way, but still really cool. And anyway, they always are. We were on Penn State. That's what Beast was on. And that was kind of the deciding factor. I was like, I got to have a play. I got to tweet something out for this. Ended up jumping on Penn State money line. I don't know what it was, -120. And Penn State won it 35-21, but I didn't want to note that Cam Rising, the quarterback for Utah, got hurt in this one and got knocked out of the game, in fact. And that did change things, but I did feel like Penn State was the better team. It probably doesn't finish up as that easy of a win for Penn State if Cam Rising's in the game, but a good win for Penn State. And shout out to the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to say it, that just based on maybe the eye test, you'd assume that Penn State still may have been able to pull it off.
I was feeling really good about my Penn State bet even at halftime or whatever it was, or maybe it was, halftime. It was tied, but I felt good.
Yeah, I did too. They were moving the ball well. I liked what I was getting out of the, that Penn State running game that we really, that run game too. We talked about, they got two guys that really pop off. Obviously Singleton, man, he is nuts.
Singleton had a coming out party and he's a freshman. I did not realize that.
The fact that he's a freshman, I talked about him a little bit earlier this year too, when we covered Penn State. I said, man, like, I think this kid might be like the next Saquon. I think you do it in the Rose Bowl. That's a big time statement, but the defense for Penn State, you're right. They did their job. You hold Utah, a pretty solid Utah team, to 21. I know Rising was out, but Penn State still was doing a pretty good job. I think, what was it, like 10-10 at halftime or something like that? It was no, it was 14-14, I should say. But yeah, low scoring first half, I guess, in a certain sense from defense perspective.
Yes, yeah. I mean, what are you going to do? Just an insane game, and with those injuries and whatnot, the way it turned out, that's kind of part of the reason I wasn't on Utah too, because they had Kincaid was out, Tavion Thomas was out. Those are kind of my guys, and I knew Beast was on Penn State, so it made me feel good to be on the right side. Good winner for us, but we had one more game, and this was the craziest game. I was on this over as the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, Tulane USC. I kind of want to just set up the fourth quarter. So USC hits a field goal to go up 45-30. with 4 minutes left in this game. Tulane then goes on a 2-play touchdown drive. So it's 37-45. Then they kick it deep, and it's a mishandled kickoff, and it goes out at the 1 yard line. What does the Green Wave do but get a safety? All of a sudden, it's a 6-point game, 39-45, 3 minutes left. They go all the way down the field, used all their timeouts with 9 seconds left. They get in the end zone. They hit the extra point to win it. 46-45, Tulane. Incredible win for the program. As many crazy games as we've had this bowl season. It's been an amazing bowl season. This may have been the best one.
It was because that was a game too. That's funny because like I was watching that with some of my family, and they were like, "Wasn't Tulane just down a bunch?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like they were." That because like I was kind of going nuts. I'm like, "Oh my god, they just got this safety." Like I was like, they could for sure win this game. Like they need to win this game. They're getting the ball back. Like you've got to do it just for America. You know what I mean? And the Tulane, like we kind of mentioned that too. That we said Tulane was going to take this game really serious. And their fans very much so as well, just because truthfully, like when you're a non-Power 5, when you get the opportunity to play in this big of a matchup and against the Heisman winner in, you know, what most people consider to be a blue blood in USC, this is definitely like you want to make your mark. And as a school like Tulane, their fans looked like they were going absolutely bananas in the stands when that touchdown got. Yeah, that was the other thing too, is that touchdown call. They had to overturn it. They thought it was an incomplete pass. Then it gets called, because like they didn't think it was a touchdown on the field. They review it.
Yes, the arms were underneath the ball, and the ball actually never hit the ground. Yeah,
which was nuts. And then you just see the fans going absolutely nuts in the stands. I was
like we said, a lot of Tulane fans there. We thought that would be the case.
Good for them, man. Good for them. That was a big win. Cool. I love to see it because USC can win a game like that any other year. They've won tons of big games.
Yeah.
You know,
this game means a lot more to one team than it did to the other. No doubt. No doubt. It was really fun to win. And I guess I had the over, and that hit pretty quick in the third quarter. So then it was just watch for fun and see what happens. And yeah, wow, Tulane. I couldn't even believe it. But really fun game. Really, really fun game. So that wraps up our college football talk. We need to transition, talk about the NFL. We had a crazy weekend. So I want to give an update. We talked earlier about just because this is what's happening as we're recording. We talked about this earlier. I've gotten a few updates on DeMar Hamlin. So he has a pulse. This is as he's being transported. He has a pulse, but they did an AED and CPR on the field. So trying to get his heart going. But obviously, if you hear what I'm saying, they're trying to keep his pulse, trying to get him to breathe and things. That's not good. Humans kind of need to do that stuff to live. So it's
no, 100%. The fact so
likely, only reason I'm bringing it up is likely the Monday night game. We're not going to get to see the end of it. But go ahead.
I wouldn't expect. Yeah, kind of like you had mentioned. Typically, this is kind of a situation where you'd postpone the game. The last time I can remember seeing something similar to this is in that soccer game.
Oh yes,
during
Denmark.
Denmark. And,
at the European Championships.
Yep, and that it was same thing. Like 2 summers ago, they postponed that game, and I would expect that's probably what happens here. But it's just we don't see players collapse on the field like that very often. I was able to kind of see the replay of it, and he just falls back. So scary stuff. I'm glad that they were prompt on it, and have all those professionals there. And it sounds like he's got a pulse. Hopefully things are looking up. You never want to guarantee anything, but you'd hope so. At least.
And you bring up a good case because this has happened before, and the guy in question did end up pulling through. So we'll hope that he does pull through, but there's not going to be probably any Monday night updates on this episode. So there you go. Bam. All right. So we're going to try to get into a little bit of the NFL stuff because it's crazy right now. We've got people getting eliminated, coaches not knowing they could be eliminated. I don't know if you saw that from the Commanders.
So bad,
we'll get to that when we get to the Commanders. Just wanted to mention Cowboys beat the Titans 27-13. This game didn't matter really for the Titans. I don't know if you knew that. They can still win their division with a win at the Jags. I believe that game's in Jacksonville this weekend. We'll decide who goes to the playoffs. So that's kind of cool. We've got a couple scenarios like that this next weekend where it's basically a win or go home, and that's pretty cool. Kind of like the playoffs start a week early. But a good win for the Cowboys. It wasn't pretty, but they got the job done. And what are you going to say? They covered the spread. So we had one game that didn't matter at all. Falcons-Cardinals. Falcons win at 2019, so we won't even stop there. Let's talk about the Lions first. It's a great place to start. Lions were awesome. I was on Lions team total over 28.5. They end up scoring 41. They win at 41-10 over the Bears. What are your thoughts?
Man, I'm just pissed off. Why couldn't we have done that 2 weeks ago against Carolina? I shouldn't say I'm pissed off. I'm very excited. I'm pumped to have an opportunity to make the playoffs next week against Green Bay. But because of last week against Carolina and because of a couple other games that you slipped up in earlier in the season, you've put yourself in a position where you could go to Green Bay, win that game, and you still don't make the playoffs if Seattle wins. And you shouldn't have put yourself in that situation. Now, yes, you still had to go and you had to win that game against the Bears. You had to put yourself into a position where we're going to get Sunday Night Football. And that game's going to be electric. We're going to be locked in.
That is Sunday night confirmed.
Yeah. So they moved it to Sunday Night Football. Probably respectfully, they probably did it more for the Packers because the Packers are just winning. They're just winning.
We can kind of talk about the scenario. So the Packers get a great win at home against the Vikings, 41-17. Don't want to read into the final score so much because this was just if you were watching this game, I was pretty heavily watching it. Every bounce in the world went the Packers' way. They capitalized every time the Vikings made any kind of mistake, and the Vikings were not sharp at all. Obviously, their position's kind of secured, so they're playing for a little bit less. So it makes me wonder if that's part of it too. They weren't really – they can still try to snag that number 1 seed, but yes, the Packers have played themselves in a position where if they win this weekend, they're in that wild card spot. And they're playing some good football right now, so it sets up a great Sunday Night Football. Kirk Cousins not great. So then the third factor in this is Jets Seahawks. The Seahawks are the other team in this scenario what's interesting is the Packers own the tiebreaker over the Seahawks, but the Lions do not own the tiebreaker over the Seahawks.
Yeah.
The Seahawks beat the Jets 23-6 at home in a spot where it was basically a win or go home, even though both teams are in different conferences. They both needed this win desperately. Seattle gets it, and now their last game's at home against the Rams Sunday at 3:25 Central Time. So I don't know what time that is West Coast. 1:25. Yep. So we'll see if the Rams can throw any kind of a sneaky like little upset game in there. You never know. Baker's been playing okay, but not great. Seahawks are in a good position to make the playoffs. But as we said, that game, Packers, they win, they're in. The Lions, if they win, they also need the Seahawks to lose, which sucks. But it's the reality. It could happen. Like it very well could happen. We'll see. I mean, it's not like the Seahawks are just world beaters, and they're 4-4 at home, so it's not like they're just dominant at home either.
True.
Yeah. So we shall see. It's going to be an electric weekend setting up. We got to get in. Do you have any thoughts on kind of those three?
Yeah, just I'm going to be locked in on that early game between Rams and Seahawks.
Right. We'll know, I guess, before Sunday night whether that game,
which is kind of a bummer because if Seahawks do win, Lions basically go into that game. Well, they might want to just
spoilers.
Yeah, they might want to. Honestly, I would be okay with that. We can spoil Green Bay season.
That would be honestly. That's almost as good as winning and not going to the playoffs. Is almost as good as just going to the playoffs and just getting smoked in the first round.
Yeah.
So like this is.
I don't think Dan Campbell's the kind of guy that would just be like, yeah, you know what? We'll mail it in. We'll let Aaron Rodgers just coast
instead,
into, he'd be like, no. Like
we ain't letting Aaron Rodgers.
I'm sure Dan Campbell does not like Aaron Rodgers. I think that's strong feeling there.
They are the opposites in this world. And so, yeah, you're right. No matter what, we're going to get a great effort out of the Lions. That's going to be basically a playoff game Sunday night. So I'm pumped.
Yep.
Let's get into some of the other games. There were some other kind of playoff spots that have been solved. Chiefs beat the Broncos 27-24. What's interesting about this is they're in a dead heat race with the Bills, and I think even the Bengals can make a run at the 1 seed in the AFC. But because that game between the Bengals and the Bills likely isn't going to happen, I don't know how they figure all that now. But the Chiefs put themselves in a good position with a good win against a rival. It was closer than everybody expected. Finally, if anyone's keeping update with what's his name, Russ Wilson bathrooms more than touchdowns thing, he's finally got more touchdowns than he has bathrooms in his house. So shout out Russ Wilson. Let's move down the slate. Patriots beat the Dolphins 23-21. Teddy Bridgewater, the second string quarterback for the Dolphins, got knocked out in this one. Patriots win, and now they're in a great position. I believe they're in a win-and-in scenario to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Dolphins need a little help, but they can still get in. You got any thoughts on that?
I got to give the Patriots credit, man. I know that this was against backup quarterback and then backup quarterback, but, they're winning the games on their schedule, and they've put themselves into a position where when I watched the Patriots earlier this season, especially when Mac Jones went down and stuff, I was like, yep, I guess it's just not their year. I didn't see them making the playoffs, and they've really rallied, the second half of the season, and I think they could do it. I really do. I think they could come out and, maybe find a way in. But a lot of things still got to happen, obviously. But, yeah, like you said, you put yourself in a win and in situation and trust Bill Belichick. He lives for moments like that, win and in. I think they could do it, man.
I do too. I absolutely love it. Okay, so we had Giants clinching their spot. They beat the Colts 38-10. Not much to talk about there. Pretty dominant performance from the Giants. Colts in a position where they're really trying to lose now, trying to get a better draft pick. So not much to talk about there. Let's go Saints-Eagles. This was really interesting because the Eagles could have locked up 1 seed, could have locked up NFC East, but they didn't. Gardner Minshew was still their quarterback, so they're still in a backup there, but they lose at home 20-10 to the Saints, who were trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. We'll kind of get to that in a minute. Eagles now open the door for teams like the Cowboys to jump them, teams like the 49ers to jump them. They have a must-win game this weekend against the Giants, who've already sealed their playoff spot. But Brian Daboll is a lot like Dan Campbell, where I can't really see him just going, yeah, just let the Eagles run all over us and get all the momentum going into the playoffs. I could see them putting up a fight, trying to beat the Eagles and kind of shaking things up.
Yeah, that was a bigger game, I think, than I expected it to be.
Yes, it shifted things a lot.
Because once you kind of started explaining that on Sunday night, I was like, damn, like, honestly, I could see the Giants going in like next week and potentially just rattling some off, especially if Jalen Hurts might still be resting. Like I would expect maybe they bring in Jalen Hurts if he's healthy this week.
Yeah.
But who knows, man? Like,
yeah, and he may even be on a situation where it's like, okay, we're going to play in the first half, and if it's, looks kind of chippy, then we're not going to, who knows?
Because they're probably looking at the long run like, well, do we get him hurt in week 18 or do we save him for the playoffs? Like,
or do we think he's good enough that even if we're not the 1 seed, we'll be okay? So
crazy,
interesting way the season is finished. I mentioned the Saints won to give themselves a chance. Well, sadly, the Buccaneers beat the Panthers at home 30-24 to seal their position. They won the NFC South. I guess the most likely scenario is that they end up playing the Dallas Cowboys in Tampa, but crazy things happen. Like we said, the Eagles could lose and it shifts everything. But Buccaneers got a win there at home. Beast and I were both on Panthers plus 3.5, which feels terrible because we were in an awesome position. We were playing great football. And then basically Mike Evans happened and they kept doing the same play. It was just a streak to Mike Evans, throw the ball straight up in the air. And he came down with it 3 times, 207 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. Probably won my fantasy matchup. I would think definitely now because the guy I'm playing had Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen that he needed them to have good games. And obviously I don't know how fantasy football is going to handle this situation, but Buccaneers do win that division, NFC South. You got any thoughts on that?
Well, we had a 21-10 game,
I know.
Panthers were up 21-10 with 14 minutes left in that game. And like you said, man, we were kind of sitting pretty, and then Tom Brady and Mike Evans happened, and that's
the great equalizer when you got a guy that big and you got a guy like Tom Brady, man. Like it's always possible, which is why the Cowboys playing the Buccaneers is so scary. I want no part of the Buccaneers, no part.
Well, the other thing that was weird in that game that we kind of talked about from a gambling perspective, we weren't huge fans of them kicking the field goal and then going for the onside kick. The Panthers at the end of that game.
They basically decided that, okay, we're going to get our field goal now, and then we're going to try to recover an onside kick and then get a touchdown. I think they did that a little bit backwards because if you think about it, if you recover an onside kick, you only need like 10 yards to hit the field goal. I think they were thinking like, well, let's preserve time so we can score a touchdown. Where they had the clock stopped, things were great. They actually had to waste a timeout to stop the clock to kick the field goal to get the guys on the field or whatever.
Yeah, and it was like second down when they decided to do it. So my thing was, I was like, bro, like, to be honest, just get your touchdown, get us the cover, and then if you guys want to dilly-dally, like, but that's just definitely the gambler in myself talking.
Right,
I was
we were looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I'm like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, why would you kick a field goal right now? But the touchdown would have put us down 2 and like perfect.
Anything could have happened there. Probably been in great position. So let's move down the board. We had Browns Commanders. The only relevant because the Commanders had that other wild card seed. We needed them to lose and these other teams to win so that someone else could get in there. But the Browns did the job 24-10. They had Carson Wentz in there. The Commanders did. It was a mess. This game was so bad for them. They unveiled this new mascot who's like a pig. I don't know if you saw it. I don't remember. His name's like Mr. Tutty or some stupid thing.
Commander Tutty or something.
Yeah, and he just it was all bad. Anyway.
Looks like Porky the Pig.
Yeah, he's just like a big pink pig. It's very odd. I think he got booed because he came out at halftime or something. I don't know. Moving down the board, Jaguars handled business against the Texans. Again, this game didn't matter too much because this game this weekend against the Texans is the only thing that matters for the Jags, but I believe they are at home there, so that's good. 49ers beat the Raiders in overtime 37-34 in one of the more exciting games of the weekend, just in terms of scoring. But the 49ers put themselves in a position, I think if it goes as straightforward as Eagles lose, 49ers win, they're the 1 seed. So something to keep an eye on. They'd have the same record against the Cowboys, or as the Cowboys, I mean, but I think they own a tiebreaker. So I think the only way the Cowboys can get one is if 49ers lose and Eagles lose. That's not going to happen. I wouldn't think, but unless people start resting starters and whatnot, that's one thing to keep an eye on in these late week situations. But do you have any thoughts on the 49ers?
I love the 49ers. And I want to say this was their 10th win, I believe. I think this was their 10th win. I might have to check this real quick.
The 49ers, they have 12 wins.
12. Okay, never mind. So yeah, so I was off on that.
I know their record is way better than you might think it is.
Yeah, I was like
in the beginning, we're pretty solid, and then they've really ramped it up at the end.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. Is they don't probably fly off the paper to anybody, but their defense is ridiculous. With a weird overtime win like that, I don't know like what to think about Brock Purdy going forward. You know, like he
is still a rookie. He was still the last pick of the draft. I mean, he's had a good start, but man, they're still like, it's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, they were 9.5-point favorites in that one, and they got the job done, but they definitely didn't cover. No. So we'll see. I like the 49ers. I think they could be really dangerous in the playoffs, but you got to play consistent. And that was a weird game too, because that was I mean, we didn't have Derek Carr.
Stidham, who had a great game,
kind of went off.
He kind of went off.
Yeah,
against the tough defense. So impressive performance. Let's move down the slate. We got a couple games left. Chargers, they're sealed into a playoff spot, but they are locked into that wild card spot. It'll be interesting seeding between the Ravens and them because they have the same record. So we'll just have to see how that breaks out. But they beat the Rams 31-10. Let's talk Steelers-Ravens because this game didn't get good really until the fourth quarter for the Steelers. The Steelers ended up winning at 16-13, but 10 of those points came in the final quarter. They scored a touchdown at the end of the game. It's all over TikTok because it was like Najee Harris and some of the guys, like maybe George Pickens, were kind of talking to the Ravens fans, and they were holding the Ravens flag, and maybe as Najee Harris grabs the flag from the fan, the classic, like just that division in general is so heated, but like so are the fans. Like it was a good time, but yeah. So the Steelers win. They put themselves in a position. I believe they can still make the playoffs too. I need to pull up the standings real quick, but I think they're in command. I don't know
if it's crazy.
If they're in a. I know. How do they even have a chance? But they do. Let's look. Yes. So they right now would need the Patriots to lose, though, I think, and then they need to win. They may need the Miami Dolphins to lose too, the way I'm looking at this. So it's very not likely, but the fact that they've even put themselves in a position is pretty impressive.
You never know. Yeah, I mean, I was talking about the Patriots earlier and saying, I think they win. But they're playing Buffalo next week. So as much as
they've got to beat Buffalo, and I think it's maybe even in Buffalo.
It is in Buffalo. Now the question is Buffalo going to be, starting everybody? They might. I don't know. I don't know if they would sit guys. They might still be playing for seeding too, though.
Monday Night Football's still suspended as of right now. So
so who knows?
I don't know how they're going to work all this out.
Yeah, which is the weird thing was, kind of going back to that. My brother just texted me and he was like, "Hey, like, what's going to happen with fantasy football in this situation?" And I'm like, like they'll probably have to play this game or they're going to do I don't know what happens.
I would assume they can't just cancel it because
I don't think they can either.
If this was just like a Cardinals versus the freaking Falcons, they would, and it wouldn't be a big deal. But there's so much riding on this game. Like, I don't know. Okay, yeah, but an insane weekend of NFL football. We'll try to have all those scenarios for you on Thursday because it does get a little crazy with seedings and things. But
that's definitely matter for our betting too.
Yes, yeah, because we got to know who's resting starters, who's not, who's motivated, who's not. That stuff's all important. I'm trying to pull up the schedule for next weekend now. I know. Okay, yeah. So we don't have a Thursday game, but we have 2 Saturday games, and then the rest are all on Sunday. And in fact, that Saturday night game is our Tennessee-Jacksonville game. So a little bit of a pseudo playoff game. Saturday night, Cold One Classic. I mean,
it's got to be a Cold One Classic.
Yeah,
man.
It's gonna be fun.
That's gonna be fun.
crazy matchups coming up this weekend. Obviously, the show coming out Friday morning will be a lot of fun. You guys will want to tune into that one. You got any final thoughts? I guess we'll kind of sign out here. You got any thoughts?
Not too much. Just lock in for Thursday, just because it's going to be a big show, guys. Obviously,
Huge.
Big CFB championship conversation we'll probably be going through. And
that's when our picks will come
plays.
out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then just wrapping up the NFL season. As far as it's going to be electric. So some of these games and figuring out how we can finish out the season on a high note. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. It was a great weekend of football. Absolutely incredible. Really just an amazing sports weekend. There was even some good hockey going on. I know the outdoor game, the Winter Classic was today, which was at Fenway Park in Boston. Really cool. I was there just this spring. So it's kind of cool to see it when it's cold and there's ice and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, we appreciate you guys listening to the show. We'll be back. We love you. Peace.
Peace out, guys.